The freezing winter wind howled through the steel canyons of the financial district, cutting through the thin, threadbare sweater of little Nin as she stood shivering outside the towering golden gates of the Lu Corporation. Beside her, Jiang Rou, her face pale and hidden behind a cheap medical mask, knelt on the icy pavement, her hands trembling not just from cold, but from deep, paralyzing fear. Jiang Rou, once the most promising voice in the conservatory, was now mute, her throat crushed by the trauma of a fire 6 years ago, leaving her 5-year-old daughter to be their voice. Nin clutched a battered, taped-up microphone that wasn't even plugged in, opened her mouth, and let out a sound that defied the grim reality of their poverty. It was the song of the evening breeze, a melody so pure, so crystalline, that it seemed to hang in the frosty air like a suspended diamond. Businessmen in expensive suits rushed past, ignoring them, but Nin sang louder, her sapphire eyes that held a strange, fierce intelligence, scanning the crowd for a shred of kindness. "Please," Nin's voice wavered between notes. "My mommy is sick, just 1 coin." A crimson Ferrari screeched to a halt at the curb, its tires splashing dirty slush onto Jiang Rou's knees. Out stepped Shen Fei, the celebrated piano princess of Jinghai, wrapped in a white mink coat that cost more than Jiang Rou's entire life. Shen Fei adjusted her diamond earrings, her face twisting in disgust as the melody reached her ears. She recognized the song. It was the very song she had stolen credit for years ago to become famous. "What is this screeching?" Shen Fei snapped, marching over and kicking the small, rusted tin bowl Nin had placed on the ground. The 3 coins inside scattered into the gutter. "This is the headquarters of the Lu Group, not a garbage dump. Security, why are these rats allowed to squeak at our doorstep?" Jiang Rou grabbed Nin's arm, pulling her back protectively, her eyes wide with terror as she recognized the woman who had ruined her life. Nin, however, didn't back down. She stared up at Shen Fei, her small chin raised. "I'm not a rat," the child said, her voice trembling but defiant. "I'm a singer, and you're mean." Shen Fei laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "A singer? You look like a stain on the pavement. If you want to sing, go sing in the sewers where you belong." She raised her hand, ready to slap the defiance out of the child's face. Jiang Rou flinched, bracing to use her own body as a shield, but the blow never landed. "That is enough." The voice didn't shout, but it carried the weight of a thunderclap. The heavy glass doors of the building slid open, and Grandma Lu, the iron matriarch of the Lu family, stepped out leaning on her dragon head cane. Her silver hair was immaculate, her presence terrifying. She walked straight past the bowing security guards, ignoring Shen Fei completely, and stopped directly in front of Nin. The old woman's heart was hammering against her ribs. That song. She hadn't heard that specific melody since the night her son, Lu Chen, was saved from the fire 6 years ago, the night he lost his memory. Grandma Lu looked down into Nin's eyes and gasped. The shape, the intensity, it was like looking into a mirror of her son's face from 30 years ago. "Little one," Grandma Lu's voice shook, losing its iron edge. "Who taught you that song?" Nin wiped a tear from her freezing cheek. "My mommy. She says it's the only thing she has left to give me." Grandma Lu looked at the woman kneeling on the ground, Jiang Rou, who kept her head bowed low, hiding her eyes, terrified of being recognized. Grandma Lu felt a magnetic pull, an instinct that screamed family. She reached into her silk purse, bypassing the cash, and pulled out a card that glimmered ominously under the streetlights. The Centurion Black card with no limit. A card only 10 people in the city possessed. The security guards gasped. Shen Fei's jaw dropped. "Grandma Lu, you can't be serious. They are scammers." Shen Fei shrieked, her composure cracking. Grandma Lu ignored her, pressing the cold metal card into Nin's dirty, frostbitten hand. "Take this. Buy food, buy clothes, buy the whole store if you want. It is yours." "But, Grandma, this looks important," Nin whispered, holding the heavy card with 2 hands. "We can't pay you back." Grandma Lu smiled, a rare, genuine warmth breaking through her stern face. Consider it an investment in that voice. Suddenly, the revolving doors spun again. The atmosphere dropped 10 degrees. CEO Lu Chen emerged, flanked by 4 assistants. He looked impeccable in his charcoal suit, but his face was pale, beads of sweat on his forehead. The elevator ride down had triggered his severe claustrophobia, and he was currently fighting the urge to collapse. He needed air. He needed silence. "Mother!" Lu Chen's voice was deep, cold, and laced with irritation. "We are late for the engagement banquet. Why are you interacting with this?" He gestured vaguely at Jiang Rou and Nen, his vision blurring slightly from his panic attack. To him, they were just obstacles delaying him from getting into the car. Jiang Rou heard his voice, that deep, resonant voice she had dreamed of for 6 years, the voice of the man she had saved, the father of her child who didn't even know she existed. Panic surged through her. If he saw her now, if he recognized her, she couldn't let that happen. Not like this. She grabbed Nen's hand, yanking the child backward. "We have to go," she signed frantically. "Wait, Mommy, the nice lady gave me." Nen tried to protest, but Jiang Rou was already dragging her into the shadows of the alleyway, fleeing from the one man she loved and feared most. Lu Chen frowned, watching them run. A strange sensation hit his chest. Not the tightness of claustrophobia, but a sudden, hollow ache. As they vanished around the corner, something fell from Nen's pocket. A small, cheap plastic keychain of a musical note. "Drive the car around," Lu Chen ordered his assistants, his voice straining. He walked to the spot where the girl had stood. He bent down, his expensive suit straining, and picked up the cheap plastic keychain. It was garbage. He should throw it in the trash. But as his thumb brushed it, a melody echoed in his head. The same melody the girl had been singing. His headache vanished. Instantly, the claustrophobia that had been crushing his lungs for the last 10 minutes evaporated the moment he touched the object the girl had held. His eyes widened in shock. He looked at the empty alleyway, then at the keychain. "Who was that child?" he whispered, his grip tightening on the plastic until his knuckles turned white. "Find them," he barked at his head of security, his cold demeanor returning with a vengeance. "Find that woman and that child. Turn the city upside down if you have to." Shen Fei watched him, her eyes narrowing into slits of venomous jealousy. She didn't know who the mute woman was, but she knew one thing for certain. That little girl was dangerous. The glass elevator of the Lu Corporation was a masterpiece of modern engineering soaring 60 floors above the glittering skyline of the city, but to CEO Lu Chen, it was a transparent coffin. The meeting with the foreign investors had run late and his stress levels were spiking, triggering the dormant beast in his mind. As the lift passed the 40th floor, the sleek metal box shuddered a mechanical hiccup that meant nothing to a normal person, but to Lu Chen it was a death knell. His breath hitched in his throat. The world tilted on its axis. The walls of the elevator seemed to shrink, moving inward to crush him, and the air turned into liquid concrete, filling his lungs but refusing to provide oxygen. He clawed at his silk tie, tearing the top button of his shirt as black spots danced in his vision. He fumbled in his pocket, his trembling fingers brushing against the cheap, cold plastic of the keychain he had found in the alleyway yesterday. He gripped it like a lifeline, squeezing until the jagged edges dug into his palm, hoping for that miraculous wave of relief he had felt before. Nothing happened. The magic had faded. The lingering scent of the little girl's voice was gone, leaving him alone in the suffocating dark. He collapsed to the floor, gasping for air, his heart hammering a frantic rhythm against his ribs like a trapped bird. "Help!" He wheezed, but the word died on his lips, swallowed by the roaring in his ears. The security camera in the corner blinked a silent red eye, watching the most powerful man in the city drown in thin air. But he didn't know that help was miles away, struggling just to survive the night. Across the city, in a drafty basement apartment that smelled of damp mold and instant noodles, Jiang Rou paced the concrete floor, her heart breaking with every step. Nen was curled up on the single thin mattress, her small face flushed with fever, shivering violently despite being buried under all their coats. The black card Grandma Lu had given them sat on the wobbly wooden table, gleaming under the single flickering light bulb like a dangerous artifact. We can't use it. Jiang Rou signed to herself, her hands shaking. If she swiped that card, the transaction would be tracked immediately. Lu Chen would find them. He would take An away. Or worse, he would realize who she was. The mute cleaner he had once promised to marry before the fire erased his memory, and Shen Fei stole her identity. Jiang Rou looked at the medicine bottle on the table. Empty. An groaned in her sleep, whimpering for water. Jiang Rou grabbed her coat, her eyes hardening with desperation. She couldn't use the card, but she could use her hands. She would scrub floors, wash dishes, carry bricks if she had to. She grabbed her phone, checking her bank balance. 12 yuan. Not enough for antibiotics. Not even close. A notification popped up on her cracked screen. A breaking news alert from the Lu Media Group. 1 million yuan reward. Jiang Rou froze. She tapped the notification. The headline screamed in bold red letters. Searching for a miracle healer. Musicians wanted. Must cure the chairman's mystery illness. Jiang Rou's breath caught. She knew that illness. She was the only one who knew the melody that could soothe the savage beast in Lu Chen's mind, because she was the one who had hummed it to him in the darkness of the warehouse 6 years ago, while the flames licked at the doors. Back at the Lu mansion, the atmosphere was funeral somber as Dr. Zhang shined a light into Lu Chen's dilated pupils. Grandma Lu stood by the bed gripping her cane, so hard her knuckles were white, while Shen Fei paced the room pretending to cry into a lace handkerchief. "It's getting worse, madam," Dr. Zhang said, gravely packing away his instruments. "The sedatives aren't working anymore. His claustrophobia has evolved into psychosomatic shock. If he has another episode like the one in the elevator today, his heart might not take it." Grandma Lu turned on him, her eyes fierce. "Then fix him. You are the best neurologist in the country." Dr. Zhang sighed, shaking his head. "Medicine can't fix a broken memory, madam. He responds only to a specific auditory trigger. That keychain he found gave him a temporary placebo effect because it was associated with the source, but we need the source itself. We need the person who owns that voice." Shen Fei stopped pacing. She knew exactly who owned that voice. It was that beggar child from yesterday. Fear spiked in her chest, cold and sharp. If Lu Chen found that brat and her mother, her entire web of lies, her career, her engagement, her fame, would unravel in seconds. She stepped forward, her face composed into a mask of loving concern. "Grandma, surely we don't need outsiders." Shen Fei cooed, placing a hand on Lu Chen's arm. "I am a world-class pianist. I have won awards in Vienna. I can play for Chenji. Surely my music is enough." Lu Chen, lying pale against the pillows, pulled his arm away weakly. "Your music is just technique," he whispered, his voice raspy. "It has no soul." Shen Fei flinched as if slapped, but quickly hid her rage. "I will find the cure, Chenji," she vowed, silently promising herself that if she found the beggar girl first, she would make sure the child never sang again. The next morning, the lobby of the Lu Corporation was a zoo. Musicians from all over the world had descended upon the building, lured by the 1 million yuan prize. Opera singers, violinists, folk singers, even monks chanting scriptures. They all lined up hoping to be the chosen one. Jiang Rou stood at the back of the line, wearing a baggy gray janitor's uniform and a cap pulled low over her eyes. She held a cheap violin case she had pawned her mother's ring to buy back from the shop. She couldn't sing, her voice was gone, but she could play. She had transferred her soul from her throat to her fingers years ago. She didn't want the fame. She didn't want the recognition. She just needed the cash for an surgery, and then she would vanish again. "Next!" the assistant shouted. Jiang Rou stepped forward, her heart pounding against her ribs like a trapped bird. She walked into the audition room. It was a large glass-walled studio. Sitting behind the judge's table was Shen Fei, looking bored and vicious. Next to her was an empty chair with a tablet set up, a live feed to Lu Chen's bedroom. "Name?" Shen Fei asked, not even looking up from her manicured nails. Jiang Rou didn't speak. She placed a piece of paper on the table. "Jiang Rou, violinist." Shen Fei glanced at the name and paused. A flicker of recognition? No, Jiang was a common name. A mute. Shen Fei laughed, cruel and loud. How poetic. A mute trying to cure a man who needs a voice. This is a waste of my time. Security, get her out. Jiang Rou didn't move. She raised the violin to her chin. Her eyes flashed with a sudden intense fire that startled Shen Fei. Before the guards could grab her, Jiang Rou drew the bow across the strings. She didn't play a classical piece. She didn't play a symphony. She played the evening breeze. The notes cried out from the cheap instrument, raw and agonizingly beautiful. It sounded like weeping, sounded like hope. In the bedroom miles away, Lu Chen was drifting in and out of consciousness, his chest tight with the phantom weight of the crushing walls. Suddenly the sound drifted from the tablet. His eyes snapped open. The invisible hands around his throat loosened. The air rushed back into his lungs, sweet and cool. He sat up, staring at the screen, at the woman in the gray uniform whose face was hidden by the cap. Her body swayed with the music, a movement so familiar it made his heart ache. "It's her," he whispered. Shen Fei in the audition room felt the atmosphere shift. She saw the assistants entranced. She saw the live feed monitor blinking with Lu Chen's vitals stabilizing instantly. Rage consumed her. She slammed her hand down on the buzzer, a harsh, jarring noise that cut the music dead. "Stop!" Shen Fei shrieked, standing up. "This is plagiarism. You are playing my song. I wrote this melody." Jiang Rou lowered the violin, her hands trembling. She couldn't speak to defend herself. She couldn't scream that Shen Fei was a thief. "You dare come here and steal my art?" Shen Fei signaled the guards, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Break her instrument and throw her out." The guards hesitated, but Shen Fei was the future mistress of the house. One guard grabbed the violin and smashed it against the floor. The wood splintered with a sickening crunch. Jiang Rou fell to her knees, gathering the pieces, tears streaming silently down her face. "Get out!" Shen Fei screamed triumphantly. But she didn't see the door behind her opening. She didn't see the dark shadow looming in the doorway. "Who gave you the right?" A voice like absolute zero filled the room. "To stop the music?" Lu Chen stood there, leaning against the doorframe, pale and sweating in his pajamas, but looking like a vengeful god. He had run from his sickbed. He had run to find the sound. And now he was looking straight at the woman kneeling on the floor. The silence in the audition room was deafening, broken only by the ragged breathing of CEO Lu Chen. He stood barefoot on the cold marble floor, his silk pajamas clinging to his sweat-drenched back, his dark eyes locked onto the trembling figure of Jiang Rou. "I asked a question," Lu Chen rasped, his voice weak but commanding absolute obedience. "Who was playing that violin?" Shen Fei's mind raced at 1,000,000 miles an hour. She stepped in front of Jiang Rou, blocking Lu Chen's view of the woman's face. "Chunji, you should be in bed," Shen Fei exclaimed, her voice dripping with fake panic. This is just a copycat. I hired a mute cleaner to help test the acoustics for my new composition. I didn't realize she would try to steal my melody to claim the reward. I was just disciplining her." Lu Chen frowned, swaying slightly on his feet. The adrenaline was fading, and the dizziness was returning. "A copycat?" he muttered, looking past Shen Fei's shoulder. Jiang Rou kept her head down, her heart hammering against her ribs. She wanted to scream, "It's me! I am the one you loved!" But she couldn't. She was mute, powerless, and facing the woman who had destroyed her family. If she exposed herself now, without proof, Shen Fei would have her arrested for fraud. Jiang Rou made a split-second decision. She grabbed the broken neck of her violin, bowed deeply to hide her face, and ran. "Wait!" Lu Chen called out, taking a step forward, but his knees buckled. His assistant, Special Assistant Wang, caught him just before he hit the floor. "CEO Lu, we need a doctor." The room dissolved into chaos. Shen Fei watched Jiang Rou's retreating figure with a look of pure, unadulterated hatred. She had dodged a bullet, but she knew one thing for certain. As long as that mute woman and her brat were in the city, her position as the future Mrs. Lu was in danger. She pulled out her phone and dialed the head of housekeeping. "That mute woman who just ran out. Hire her. Yes, you heard me. Give her the filthiest job in the mansion. Keep her close where I can watch her, and where I can make her life a living hell until she begs for death." Can you believe Shen Fei's audacity? She is playing a dangerous game with the CEO's life. If you want to see Shen Fei get what she deserves, smash that like button right now. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the moment Lu Chen finally uncovers the truth. Let's see if Jiang Rou can survive the trap Shen Fei is setting. 3 days later, Jiang Rou was scrubbing the marble floors of the Lu Mansion's grand foyer. She had taken the job. She had no choice. The salary was high enough to buy Annen's medicine, and Grandma Lu had unknowingly insisted that the poor mute girl be given a chance to work. But Shen Fei made sure it was torture. Jiang Rou's hands were raw and blistered from harsh chemicals. Suddenly, a small shadow fell over her. "Mommy!" Jiang Rou froze. She looked up to see Annen standing there, clutching her tattered backpack. She had sneaked in through the delivery entrance to see her mother. Jiang Rou's eyes widened in terror. She frantically signed, "Go. You can't be here. If the bad lady sees you..." Well, a voice sneered from the top of the grand staircase. Shen Fei descended like a vulture, her heels clicking ominously on the steps. The rat brought her piglet. Shen Fei cornered them near the private elevator, the one reserved only for the CEO. "I told you to keep your trash out of my sight," Shen Fei hissed. She looked at Annen, who was staring at her with those defiant, sapphire eyes. Lu Chen's eyes. It made Shen Fei's blood boil. An idea, dark and wicked, formed in her mind. "You want to explore the mansion, little one? Go ahead. The playroom is on the top floor. Take the elevator." Shen Fei pressed the button. The golden doors slid open. Jiang Rou shook her head frantically, grabbing Annen, but Shen Fei shoved the child hard. Annen stumbled backward into the elevator. "Mommy!" Annen cried. Before Jiang Rou could rush in, Shen Fei slammed her hand on the panel and stepped back. The doors hissed shut, separating mother and daughter. Jiang Rou pounded on the gold metal, her mouth opening in a silent scream. Shen Fei smirked and pulled a key from her pocket, the maintenance override key. She twisted it in the wall panel. Click, the power to the elevator cut. Inside the glass box, the lights flickered and died. The elevator jerked to a violent halt between the 20th and 21st floors. Total darkness. Annen gasped, dropping her backpack. The air grew still. The walls seemed to close in. For a normal child, this was scary. But for a child who had inherited her father's claustrophobia, this was lethal. Annen collapsed into the corner, clutching her throat, her small chest heaving as the panic attack set in. "Mommy!" She wheezed. 40 floors above, in the CEO's office, Lu Chen felt a sudden, sharp pain in his chest. A biological instinct. He stood up, knocking over his coffee. "Something is wrong," he muttered. He looked at the security grid on his monitor. Elevator 1. Stalled. Error code. Manual override. Lu Chen's face went pale. That was his elevator. He grabbed his coat and ran. He didn't wait for the technicians. He didn't wait for security. He sprinted down the stairs, floor after floor, ignoring the burning in his lungs. He reached the 21st floor and pried the outer doors open with his bare hands, his veins bulging with effort. He looked down into the shaft. The car was stuck just below him. "Is anyone in there?" he shouted, his voice echoing in the darkness. A weak, terrified whimper floated up. "Uncle, I can't breathe." Lu Chen's heart stopped. It was the girl, the beggar girl. He didn't think. He didn't hesitate. He jumped. He landed on top of the elevator car with a loud thud, opened the emergency hatch, and dropped inside. The darkness swallowed him instantly. The air was stale and hot. His own claustrophobia slammed into him like a freight train. His vision blurred, his legs gave out, and he slid to the floor, gasping. "No!" He gritted his teeth, fighting the panic. "Not now." He fumbled in the dark until his hand found a small, trembling shoulder. Annen was curled in a fetal position, hyperventilating. "Little one," Lu Chen whispered, pulling her into his arms. He was shaking just as hard as she was. "Breathe. You have to breathe. It's too tight." Annen gasped, clutching his lapels with tiny fists. Lu Chen felt her terror resonating with his own. They were drowning together in the dark. He needed to calm her, but he was losing control himself. "Sing," he whispered, his voice desperate. "Sing the song, the one from the street." Anan choked back a sob. She buried her face in his chest, smelling the scent of mint and expensive cologne, a scent that felt strangely like safety. She opened her mouth. First, it was a whisper. Then, the melody grew stronger. The evening breeze. As the notes filled the tiny, suffocating space, a miracle happened. The invisible vice around Lu Chen's chest shattered. The darkness didn't feel scary anymore. It felt peaceful. He closed his eyes, resting his chin on the top of her head, his breathing syncing with hers. In the pitch black, holding the child he didn't know was his daughter, Lu Chen felt a sense of wholeness he hadn't felt in 6 years. He didn't know that outside the doors, Jiang Rou was beating her hands bloody against the metal, or that Shen Fei was watching the security feed with a look of pure horror as she realized her trap had backfired in the worst possible way. Inside the box, father and daughter were bonded by the very thing Shen Fei tried to destroy. The music. Did you get chills? The bond between father and daughter is unbreakable. Leave a comment below. Do you think Lu Chen will figure it out when the lights come back on? Share this video with a friend who loves emotional drama. The emergency lights flickered to life, bathing the elevator in a sickly red glow. The doors were pried open with a screech of metal, and fresh air rushed in. Lu Chen, still clutching Anan, blinked against the sudden brightness. He looked down at the child in his arms. Her face was tear-streaked, pale, and remarkably serene now that the song had ended. She looked up at him, and for a heartbeat, time stood still. Those eyes, up close under the red light, they were undeniable. They weren't just similar to his, they were a carbon copy. The same arch of the brow, the same sapphire depth. A jolt of electricity shot down Lu Chen's spine, a primal recognition that defied all logic. "Get a stretcher!" the head of security yelled, breaking the spell. Paramedics swarmed the elevator. Jiang Rou, who had been restrained by 2 guards to keep her from jumping into the shaft, broke free. She scrambled into the elevator, ignoring Lu Chen entirely, and snatched Anan from his arms. She checked the girl's pulse, her breathing, her limbs, frantically signing. "Are you hurt? Can you breathe?" Anan nodded weakly, pointing at Lu Chen. "The uncle. He saved me." Jiang Rou looked at Lu Chen then. Her eyes were wide with a mix of gratitude and terror. She bowed deeply, too deeply, almost hitting her head on the floor, and then turned to flee. "Stop," Lu Chen said. He didn't shout, but the single word froze the entire hallway. He stood up, his legs steady now. He walked over to Jiang Rou, towering over her. He reached out and, with a trembling hand, gently pulled a loose strand of hair from Anan's coat collar. "Take the child to the company infirmary. VIP suite. Get Dr. Zhang." He turned to his special assistant Wang, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "Take this hair sample to the lab. Run a paternity test. Immediate priority. If anyone breathes a word of this, they will disappear." Wang's eyes widened, but he nodded, taking the hair in a sealed bag. Shen Fei, watching from the shadows of the corridor, felt her knees give way. She had to intercept that test. In the infirmary, Anan was sleeping soundly, hooked up to a monitor. Jiang Rou sat by the bed, holding her daughter's hand, her mind racing. She had to leave. Tonight, they couldn't stay here. The way Lu Chen had looked at Anan, he suspected. If he found out the truth, he would take Anan away. The Lu family would never let a mute cleaner raise their heir. Jiang Rou stood up to pack their things, but the door opened. It wasn't a nurse. It was Grandma Lu. The old woman walked in, leaning heavily on her cane, her face unreadable. She sat down in the chair opposite Jiang Rou. "You are the mother," Grandma Lu stated. Jiang Rou nodded, keeping her head down. Grandma Lu reached out and lifted Jiang Rou's chin with a surprisingly gentle hand. She studied Jiang Rou's face, the scars from the fire on her neck, the sadness in her eyes. "My son. He has been sick for 6 years," Grandma Lu said softly. "Since the fire, he forgot everything. He forgot the woman he loved. He forgot himself. Jiang Rou's breath hitched. He forgot. The confirmation hit her like a physical blow. He hadn't abandoned her. He had forgotten her. Tears welled up in her eyes, spilling over before she could stop them. Grandma Lu watched the reaction carefully. But today, Grandma Lu continued, her voice trembling, when he was with your daughter, he was healed. That child is special. And you remind me of someone. Grandma Lu reached into her bag and pulled out a faded photograph. It was a picture of a young Lu Chen, smiling, holding a girl with a crescent moon birthmark on her hand. Do you know this girl? Grandma Lu asked, her eyes piercing. Jiang Rou stared at the photo. It was her. Before the scars, before the silence. Her hand instinctively moved to cover her left wrist, where the birthmark was hidden under her sleeve. Before she could react, the door slammed open. Shen Fei burst in, flanked by 2 security guards. Grandma, get away from her! Shen Fei screamed, her face twisted in fake panic. I just got the report from security. This woman, she's a spy. She's been planting bugs in the CEO's office. That's why she got trapped in the elevator. She was trying to break into his private files. Grandma Lu frowned, pulling her hand back. A spy? Shen Fei, do you have proof? Look at her bag. Shen Fei pointed. One of the guards grabbed Jiang Rou's tattered backpack and dumped it on the floor. Out spilled Annen's clothes, the medicine, and a high-tech listening device. Jiang Rou gasped silently. She shook her head violently. No, I didn't. She signed frantically. But Shen Fei had planted it there while Annen was in the elevator. See, Shen Fei sneered. She's using her child as a cover to steal corporate secrets. Arrest her. The guards grabbed Jiang Rou. Annen woke up, screaming, Mommy! Grandma, please! Shen Fei pressed. We can't risk Chenji's safety. Throw her out. And take the child to child services. Wait! A deep voice cut through the hysteria. Lu Chen stood in the doorway, holding a piece of paper. His face was a mask of cold fury. He walked into the room, ignoring Shen Fei, ignoring the guards, and stopped in front of Jiang Rou. He looked at the listening device on the floor, then at Shen Fei. You think, Lu Chen said, his voice dangerously calm, that a woman who can't afford a winter coat for her daughter can afford military-grade espionage equipment? Shen Fei stammered, Chanji, she must be working for a rival. Lu Chen ripped the paper in his hand in half. It wasn't the DNA test. It was the security log. The log shows you entered the locker room where this bag was stored 10 minutes ago. Shen Fei. The room went silent. Shen Fei turned pale. Lu Chen turned to Jiang Rou. He didn't look angry. He looked desperate. He held up his phone. On the screen was the preliminary DNA match result. 99.9% probability. He didn't say it out loud. He couldn't. Not yet. Not with Shen Fei watching. He needed to protect them. Let them go, Lu Chen ordered the guards. And Shen Fei, if you ever touch their belongings again, you won't just lose your engagement. You'll lose your freedom. He turned to Jiang Rou, his eyes burning into hers. You are not a spy, but you are not just a cleaner either. He reached out and took her left hand, the one she was hiding. He pushed up her sleeve. There, on her wrist, was the crescent moon birthmark. Lu Chen froze. The memory flashed. A warehouse, fire, a girl singing, holding his hand, that specific mark on her wrist. It's you, he whispered, his voice cracking. The ghost voice. My savior. Jiang Rou snatched her hand back, terrified. She grabbed Annen and backed away. She couldn't handle this. It was too fast, too dangerous. She ran out of the room, dragging Annen with her. Lu Chen tried to follow, but Grandma Lu grabbed his arm. Let her go, son, the old woman said, tears streaming down her face. She is scared. If you chase her now, she will run forever. We have to bring her back the right way. Lu Chen watched them disappear down the hallway, his heart pounding. He knew the truth now. He had a daughter, and the mute cleaner was the love of his life. and he was gonna get them back no matter what it cost. Oh my god, he saw the birthmark. The DNA match is confirmed. Shen Fei is losing control. Smash that like button if you're rooting for Jiang Rou. Don't forget to subscribe. The alumni gala is next, and Shen Fei is planning her deadliest trap yet. The annual Jinghai Conservatory Alumni Gala was the event of the season. The ballroom of the Grand Hyatt was draped in silk and crystals, filled with the city's elite, all waiting for the highlight of the evening. The announcement of the Lu Corporation's new music ambassador. Shen Fei stood center stage, glowing in a diamond-encrusted gown, accepting compliments like a queen. She had spun the narrative perfectly. The rumors about the cleaner were just that, rumors. Tonight, she would cement her place as Lu Chen's fiancée and the only musical genius in his life. She checked her phone. Her hired thugs had confirmed. Jiang Rou's apartment was empty. They had scared her off. Shen Fei smiled. Perfection. But the doors to the ballroom slammed open. A hush fell over the crowd. Standing in the entrance wasn't a celebrity, but it wasn't a cleaner either. It was Jiang Rou. She wore a simple, elegant black dress, one she had bought with the last of her savings. Her hair was down, hiding the scars on her neck, and she held her head high. Beside her stood Enin, wearing a small white dress that looked like a miniature version of a princess gown. They didn't look like beggars. They looked like royalty in exile. The crowd murmured, "Isn't that the mute cleaner? She looks different. Is that the child from the news?" Shen Fei's smile faltered. She grabbed the microphone. "Security, what is this trash doing here? This is a private event." She pointed a manicured finger at Jiang Rou. "Get out. You are ruining the gala." Two guards stepped forward, but a cane slammed onto the marble floor, stopping them in their tracks. Grandma Lu emerged from the VIP section, flanked by Lu Chen. The CEO looked devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, but his eyes were cold as ice, fixed solely on Shen Fei. "They are my guests," Lu Chen said, his voice amplified by the silence of the room. He walked down the stairs, not to the stage, but to Jiang Rou. He offered her his arm. "Welcome," he said softly, for her ears only. "I'm glad you came." Jiang Rou hesitated. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought she might faint. She had come to clear her name, to prove she wasn't a spy, but she hadn't expected this. She took his arm. The warmth of his touch sent a jolt through her. They walked through the crowd, parting the sea of onlookers, until they reached the front. Shen Fei watched, her face turning a sickly shade of green. She had to act fast. "Chanji," she laughed nervously into the mic. "You are so kind to the help, but tonight is about music, about talent. Since you are here, why don't we have a little performance? I will play The Evening Breeze, the song that saved your life." The crowd applauded. Shen Fei sat at the grand Steinway piano. She cracked her knuckles, gave a smug look at Jiang Rou, and began to play. The notes were technically perfect, fast, precise, loud. But as Lu Chen listened, his brow furrowed. It was empty. It was noise. The cure wasn't working. His chest began to tighten again. The anxiety crept back in. He looked at Jiang Rou. She was trembling, clutching her hands together. Shen Fei finished with a flourish, expecting a standing ovation. "Thank you. Thank you." Shen Fei beamed. "As you can see, only I possess the soul to heal the CEO." "That is a lie," a small voice piped up, and then stepped forward, climbing onto the stage. The crowd gasped. "That's not how the song goes," Enin said into the mic, her voice unwavering. "You played it wrong. You played it fast because you don't know the sad part. The part where the fire happens." Shen Fei stood up, towering over the child. "You brat, get off my stage. What do you know about music? Your mother is a mute. You are a street beggar. My mother is not a mute." Enin shouted, tears springing to her eyes. "She talks to me with the violin. She talks to me with her heart. And she wrote that song." Shen Fei raised her hand to strike the child, losing all control. "I will teach you a lesson." A violin note cut through the air like a blade. Jiang Rou had picked up the spare violin from the orchestra stand. She stepped onto the stage, placing herself between Shen Fei and Nen. She didn't look at the crowd. She looked at Lu Chen. She placed the bow on the strings, and she played. This time, it wasn't just a melody. It was a memory. The violin wept. It screamed. It mimicked the crackling of fire, the desperate gasps for air, the soothing hum of a lullaby in the dark. It told the story of a girl dragging a boy out of a burning warehouse, burning her own throat to save him. The entire ballroom was spellbound. People were crying. Lu Chen stood frozen, tears streaming down his face as the memories unlocked. The warehouse, the heat, the pain, and her. It was her. The evening breeze wasn't just a song. It was their story. As the final note faded into silence, Lu Chen walked onto the stage. He ignored Shen Fei completely. He walked up to Jiang Rou. He reached out and touched her face, his thumb tracing the scar on her neck. "It was you," he choked out. "All this time, you lost your voice. For me." Shen Fei, realizing she had lost, screamed, "It's a trick. She's faking it. Security. Enough." Lu Chen roared, turning on her. The fury in his eyes made Shen Fei shrink back. "Shen Fei, you stole her scholarship. You stole her song. You stole her life. And you tried to hurt my daughter." The crowd gasped. "Daughter?" Lu Chen turned to the audience. "This child," he pointed to Nen, "is my blood. And this woman is the only music ambassador this company will ever have. Because she is the music." He turned back to Jiang Rou and Nen, pulling them both into a crushing embrace right there on stage. Shen Fei tried to run, but Grandma Lu blocked her path, tapping her cane ominously. "Going somewhere, dear? The police are waiting outside. Fraud, attempted kidnapping, assault. You'll be playing the prison piano for a very long time." As Shen Fei was dragged away screaming, the ballroom erupted in applause. But Lu Chen didn't hear it. He was only listening to the sound of Nen laughing and Jiang Rou sobbing into his shoulder, the most beautiful music he had ever heard. Justice is served. Shen Fei is gone. But is it truly a happy ending? Jiang Rou still hasn't spoken a word, and the trauma of the past is deep. Can Lu Chen heal her heart the way she healed his mind? Don't miss the emotional finale. Hit subscribe now. The Rolls-Royce Phantom glided through the rainy streets of the city, a silent cocoon shielding them from the world. Inside, the atmosphere was thick with unspoken emotions. Nen was fast asleep in Lu Chen's lap, clutching his expensive suit jacket like a security blanket, her small chest rising and falling in a rhythm of pure peace. Jiang Rou sat on the other side, gazing out the window at the blurring city lights. She felt like Cinderella after the ball, terrifyingly waiting for the clock to strike midnight and turn her carriage back into a pumpkin. She looked down at her hands that had scrubbed floors just this morning, now resting on soft leather. A warm hand covered hers. She flinched, then relaxed. Lu Chen wasn't looking at her with pity. He was looking at her with a reverence that made her breath hitch. "I remember," he whispered, his voice rough with unshed tears. "I remember the fire. I remember the smoke. But mostly, I remember you holding my hand when everyone else ran away. I spent 6 years looking for a cure, not realizing the cure was a person I had forgotten." Jiang Rou turned her hand over, interlacing her fingers with his. She couldn't speak, so she squeezed his hand 3 times. "AM, here." The car pulled up to the Lu estate, not the cold, imposing fortress it had seemed like days ago, but a home bathed in warm, golden light. Grandma Lu was waiting at the door, defying the damp night air. When the car stopped, the servants rushed forward with umbrellas, but Lu Chen waved them off. He carried the sleeping Nen in one arm and held an umbrella over Jiang Rou with the other. They walked up the steps as a unit. Grandma Lu didn't say a word. She simply walked up to Jiang Rou and pulled her into a fierce, trembling hug. "Welcome home, daughter," the old woman whispered. "I kept your room ready. I didn't know it was for you, but I knew my son's heart would eventually find its way back." Jiang Rou buried her face in the older woman's shoulder, the last walls of her defense crumbling. For the first time in 6 years, she didn't have to be strong. She didn't have to be a fortress. She was safe. The next few weeks were a blur of healing. Dr. Jiang, the best specialist in the country, visited daily. His diagnosis changed everything. Her vocal cords are scarred, yes, he told Lu Chen in the study one evening. But the silence, that is psychological. This trauma. She screamed so hard to save you in that fire that she convinced herself she had no voice left. But the voice is there, buried under the fear. Lu Chen nodded, staring out at the garden where Jiang Rou was pushing Enen on a swing. She doesn't need to speak to be heard, he said fiercely. But if there is a voice inside her, I will spend the rest of my life making the world quiet enough for her to use it. He closed the door on the doctor and walked out into the sunlight. He had a plan. He wasn't going to buy her jewels or cars. He was going to give her back her voice. 1 month later, the Lu family gardens were in full bloom, a riot of cherry blossoms and white lilies. Lu Chen led Jiang Rou to the center of the private pavilion. He looked nervous. The man who could crash stock markets with a single phone call was shaking. Enen and Grandma Lu were watching from the balcony, giggling. Jiang Rou, Lu Chen started, facing her. I have been taking lessons. Jiang Rou tilted her head, confused. Lessons? Piano? Business? Lu Chen raised his hands. Slowly, clumsily, but with intense determination, he began to sign. You saved me. Jiang Rou's eyes widened. He continued, his movements becoming more fluid. You gave me a daughter. You gave me a life. I have been deaf for 6 years, listening only to my own fear. Now I want to listen to you. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a ring. Not a massive diamond, but a delicate band shaped like a musical note, encrusted with sapphires that matched Enen's eyes. He dropped to one knee. The wind rustled the cherry blossoms, creating a soft, natural melody around them. Will you marry me? He signed. Will you let me be your voice until you find yours? Jiang Rou stared at him, tears streaming down her face. The emotions inside her chest swelled, rising like a tidal wave, pushing against the dam she had built 6 years ago. She looked at Enen, jumping up and down on the balcony. She looked at this man who had learned a new language just to ask her a question. She opened her mouth. She tried to sign yes, but her hands wouldn't move. Instead, a sound clawed its way up her throat. It was rusty, quiet, and barely a whisper, but it shattered the silence of the garden. Yes. Lu Chen froze. He looked up, his eyes wide with shock. Did you? Jiang Rou smiled, a radiant, blinding smile that outshone the sun. She took a deep breath, fighting the years of fear, and whispered again, stronger this time. Yes, I will. Lu Chen let out a joyous, ragged laugh. He slid the ring onto her finger, stood up, and kissed her. A kiss that tasted of tears, cherry blossoms, and a future that was finally beautifully loud. Enen came running across the lawn, screaming, Daddy, Mommy, and slammed into their legs. Lu Chen scooped her up, pulling Jiang Rou close, sealing the family together in a tight embrace. High above, on the balcony, Grandma Lu wiped a tear from her eye and turned to the camera, breaking the fourth wall with a knowing smile. They say money can't buy happiness, she chuckled, tapping her cane. But a little bit of love, a lot of courage, and a very smart grandmother can certainly fix a broken family. She winked. And as for Shen Fei, well, let's just say the prison choir has a new, very unhappy soprano. The Lu family is finally whole. And this is just the beginning of their song. Can you believe she finally spoke? If that yes didn't make you cry, you have a heart of stone. What an incredible journey from the streets to the palace. If you love Jiang Rou and Enen's story, please smash that like button. It helps us create more emotional dramas for you. Don't forget to subscribe to ReelRush Dramas and hit the bell icon. Our next story is about a hidden billionaire masquerading as a delivery driver. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for watching.